Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Mark, and for 10 years, I thought I had a good marriage. I thought I had a wife who loved me, a home filled with trust, and a future worth fighting for. But I was wrong. Very wrong. What if I told you that the woman I sacrificed everything for, the woman I changed my entire life for, had been lying to me all along? That while I was breaking my body to become the man she wanted, she was in the arms of another. It started with one sentence, a simple threat, and that's when my world began to fall apart. I never imagined that a single sentence could shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage. But as I sat across from Lisa at our kitchen table that evening, staring into the cold, indifferent eyes of the woman I had spent the last 10 years of my life with, I realized how blind I had been. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the faint scent of vanilla from the candle she had lit, her usual way of setting a cozy mood. But there was nothing warm or inviting about this conversation. The words she had just spoken echoed in my mind, sending a chill down my spine. If you stop dieting, Jason, don't expect me to stay faithful. I have needs. I blinked, my hands tightening around my coffee mug. What? My voice came out strained, barely more than a whisper. Lisa sighed, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the table as if this was just another casual conversation, something as ordinary as discussing weekend plans or what to have for dinner. You heard me, she said, shrugging. I've been patient, Jason. I set clear expectations, and I thought you understood. But if you're telling me that you're giving up on your weight loss now, then I have to do what's best for me. I set my mug down slowly, afraid that if I moved too quickly, I might shatter it against the table. My pulse pounded in my ears, my heartbeat loud enough to drown out the ticking of the clock on the wall. Are you threatening me with cheating? I asked, my voice steadier now, but laced with something I hadn't expected, anger. Lisa rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be so dramatic. Dramatic? I let out a bitter laugh. Lisa, you just told me that if I stop this diet, if I stop torturing myself to meet your standards, you're going to sleep with someone else. How exactly am I supposed to react to that? For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Just for a second. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cool detachment she had worn all night. I didn't say I would cheat, she corrected, as if it made a difference. I said I might have to seek fulfillment elsewhere if my needs aren't met. The way she said it, like I was nothing more than a provider, a machine designed to fit her requirements, made my stomach churn. I had spent the last 2 years pushing myself harder than I ever thought possible, sweating through grueling workouts, turning down food I loved, ignoring the gnawing hunger in my stomach, all for her. I had lost over 100 pounds, 118 to be exact, and still, it wasn't enough. I shook my head, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, an ugly sound that fit the ugly reality of this moment. You know what, Lisa? My voice was low, but the anger beneath it was sharp enough to cut. I did this for you. I changed everything for you. And now you're telling me that it was never about my health, never about my happiness. It was just about control. Lisa's lips parted, but no words came out. That was new. She was never speechless. I leaned forward, my hands pressed flat against the table. Tell me the truth, I demanded. Was this always your plan? To dangle intimacy like a carrot in front of me, making me jump through hoops just to keep you satisfied? She swallowed, her gaze flickering to the side. That hesitation, just that split-second delay, was enough. I felt something inside me crack. Not break. Not yet. But crack. A jagged, dangerous fault line splitting open in the foundation of our marriage. I stepped back, exhaling sharply through my nose. You know what? I said, my voice eerily calm. I don't think I want to hear your answer. Lisa shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her perfect composure finally faltering. Jason, don't be ridiculous, she said, reaching out as if to grab my hand. But I pulled away. No, I snapped. You don't get to do this. You don't get to pretend like this is normal, like I'm the one overreacting. I turned and started toward the garage. I needed air, space, distance. Lisa called after me, her voice edged with something dangerously close to panic. Jason, where are you going? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. All I knew was that if I stayed here a second longer, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't ready to set fire to everything just yet. I stood in the garage, staring at the cluttered workbench, my mind a storm of emotions I couldn't untangle. The air was thick with the scent of oil and old wood, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside the house. My hands trembled as I picked up a screwdriver, turning it over in my palm, pretending I had come here to fix something. But there was nothing broken in this garage, at least, nothing that could be repaired with tools. Inside the house, Lisa was still sitting at the kitchen table. I could picture her, arms crossed, jaw clenched, replaying our argument in her head, trying to figure out if she had gone too far. Maybe she had expected me to shrug it off. Maybe she thought I would just swallow her words like I had swallowed every other selfish thing she had done over the years. But not this time. This time, something was different. I exhaled sharply, setting the screwdriver down. My pulse was still racing, my skin still hot with anger. But beneath the fury, beneath the hurt, something else had started to creep in. Doubt. Had she meant what she said? Would she really cheat on me if I stopped the diet? And, God help me, had she already done it? I squeezed my eyes shut, rubbing my temples. No, I couldn't go there. I couldn't let my mind spiral into paranoia. But the damage was done. The seed had been planted. I replayed the past 2 years in my head. The diet, the gym, the slow, painful transformation. I had convinced myself I was doing it for my health, for our future, but the truth was, I had done it for her. Every grueling workout, every skipped meal, every moment of self-doubt as I looked in the mirror, wondering if I was finally good enough, it had all been for her. And now she was telling me that none of it mattered. Or worse, that maybe it never had. A sickening thought hit me like a punch to the gut. What if this wasn't about my weight at all? What if Lisa had been unfaithful long before I ever stepped foot in a gym? My breath caught in my throat. I tried to shake the thought away, but it clung to me like a shadow, whispering all the things I didn't want to hear. Had she been seeing someone behind my back? Had she already sought fulfillment elsewhere? I thought about the way she had changed over the past 2 years. At first, she had been encouraging, excited even, praising me for every pound lost. But somewhere along the way, that enthusiasm had shifted. She had grown distant, less affectionate, less present. At the time, I had convinced myself that she was just adjusting, that maybe she was struggling with the change as much as I was. But now, with the weight of her ultimatum pressing down on me, I wasn't so sure. My heart pounded as memories I had ignored for too long resurfaced. The nights she came home late, claiming she had been out with friends, but refusing to name them. The sudden increase in work meetings. The way she had started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand, always on silent. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the workbench. I had been a fool. A blind, trusting fool. I needed to know the truth. I stormed back into the house, my movements stiff with tension. Lisa was still at the kitchen table, but now, she was hunched forward, staring into her coffee cup like it held the answers to our crumbling marriage. She looked up as I entered, her eyes wary. "You're still mad," she said flatly. I ignored her. "Where were you last Friday?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. "What? Last Friday?" I repeated, my voice like steel. "You said you had a work meeting. Where was it? Who was there?" She frowned. "Why does it matter?" I clenched my jaw. "Just answer the damn question, Lisa." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I told you. I had a work meeting." "With who?" Her hesitation was barely noticeable. A fraction of a second. But it was enough. "Just some colleagues," she said finally, her voice too casual. It wasn't a big deal. I stared at her, my stomach twisting. It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. But it wasn't the truth either. And I knew, in that moment, that I couldn't trust her. I turned on my heel and walked out, grabbing my keys from the counter. "Jason," she called after me, her voice softer now. "Where are you going?" I didn't stop. Didn't answer. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house for another second. Not with the doubt clawing at my insides. Not with the sickening realization that I was no longer just a husband questioning his marriage. I was a man hunting for the truth. I drove without a destination, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The city lights blurred past me, neon streaks in the darkness, but I barely saw them. My mind was spinning, a relentless loop of Lisa's words, her hesitant answers, the way she had looked at me when I asked about last Friday. She was hiding something. I knew it now. and I was going to find out exactly what it was. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, my heart still hammering. The place was nearly empty, just a few night owls and truckers nursing cups of coffee. I took a seat in the farthest booth, away from the fluorescent hum of the lights, and pulled out my phone. I needed evidence. Hard proof. The idea came to me so suddenly, so violently, that I nearly laughed at my own stupidity. The phone records. Lisa and I had a shared phone plan. Our home phone and both of our cell phones were under my name. That meant I had full access to our account details. I could request a call log for every single number she had dialed over the past few years. A bitter smile crossed my lips. For once, our joint finances were about to work in my favor. I opened the browser on my phone and navigated to our provider's website. My fingers were trembling as I logged in, but I forced myself to focus. I wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. I was a man on a mission. I scrolled through the options, my breath coming faster. There it was, Call History Report. I clicked on it, heart pounding. The site prompted me to select a time frame. I hesitated for half a second before choosing the last 3 years. If Lisa had been cheating, I needed to know when it had started. Had it been since I began losing weight? Before? Had she ever been loyal at all? I pressed submit. A message popped up. For detailed records, please visit your local store. I cursed under my breath. Of course, they wouldn't just hand over years of call history online. I needed to go in person. Fine. I downed the rest of my coffee, paid the bill, and headed back to my car. The next morning, I walked into our phone provider's local branch, forcing a neutral expression as I approached the counter. The woman behind it, a middle-aged employee with tired eyes and a name tag that read Karen, glanced up at me. "How can I help you?" she asked. I gave her my best attempt at a casual smile. "I need a call history printout for my home phone and my wife's cell. It's all under my name." Karen raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of data." "Yeah," I said, pretending to chuckle. I lost an important contact and figured this was the easiest way to track it down. She studied me for a moment, then shrugged and typed something into her computer. "You want the full 3 years?" "Yes," I said, trying not to sound too eager. She nodded. "It'll take a few minutes." As I waited, my stomach churned. This was it. If Lisa had nothing to hide, this would prove it. If she had been lying, well, I wasn't sure what I'd do yet. Finally, Karen returned, holding a USB drive and a thin paper receipt. "We put the call logs onto a digital file for you," she said. "That way, it's easier to sort through. It's all in there. Dates, times, numbers dialed, everything." I took the drive from her, my fingers gripping it tighter than necessary. "Thanks." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Listen, I see a lot of guys come in asking for these kinds of records. If you're looking for something, you'll probably find it." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I forced a nod and walked out. Back at home, I locked myself in the office and plugged the USB drive into my laptop. The file opened, revealing an endless spreadsheet of numbers and timestamps. I scrolled through the first few months, my pulse quickening. Most of it was normal. Calls to me, calls to family, short conversations with friends. But then, I froze. There were 2 numbers that appeared over and over again. Every Wednesday. Every Friday. Like clockwork. I clenched my jaw and copied the first number into a reverse lookup website. My stomach twisted as the results loaded. Owner, Tony B. Business, personal trainer. I felt sick. Tony, Lisa's personal trainer. The same man she had picked out for me when I started my diet. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I ran the second number through the same search engine. Unknown. Cell phone. Unregistered. A private number. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't an emotional affair gone too far. This was planned. Organized. Routine. I shut my laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Lisa had been calling Tony before I ever lost weight. She had been cutting me off to be with him. And I had been too blind, too trusting, to see it. For the first time in 2 years, I let the full weight of my anger settle over me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. I sat there in the dim glow of my office, staring at the 2 numbers on my screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. Tony, Lisa's personal trainer. The man she had picked for me. The realization hit like a fist to the gut. She had set this up from the start. She hadn't just been cheating. She had been strategic about it. While I was breaking my body to become the man she claimed to want, She had been using my own self-improvement as a smokescreen for her affair. My stomach churned. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles cracked. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a drunken, regrettable one-night stand. This was deliberate. I needed to know exactly how far it went. I opened my spreadsheet again, my hands trembling with barely contained rage. I sorted the calls by date and time, isolating the ones made to Tony's number. Wednesdays at 11:05 a.m. Every single week. Fridays at 3 p.m. Once a month. I swallowed hard, the bile rising in my throat. I knew exactly what those times meant. Wednesdays were when I had my mandatory staff meetings at work, the ones I never missed. Lisa knew I'd be gone. She counted on it. And Fridays? Those were my monthly golf outings with my brother and friends. The same routine, every time. Lisa had planned her affair around my schedule with military precision. I stared at the data, my breathing uneven. I hadn't just been lied to. I had been played. A burning heat crawled up my spine as my mind conjured the worst images possible. Lisa, my wife, in our bed, in our house, with another man. Or maybe not in our house at all. Maybe in his house, a place where I had never stepped foot, where she had created a second life that didn't include me at all. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to block out the mental images. But they wouldn't go away. I needed proof. Real proof. I reopened my browser and ran a reverse search on the second number, the unlisted one. It was trickier, but after a few attempts, I got a hit. A burner phone. No registered name, just a prepaid line. A classic affair move. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. Lisa wasn't just being reckless. She was being smart. Careful. That meant she had been at this for a long time. A long, long time. I exhaled through clenched teeth, my jaw aching from how hard I had been grinding it. The worst part was, I still didn't know how long it had been going on. I could see the patterns, but I didn't know when it had started. Had she been cheating for months? Years? Was it before I started my diet? Before I even realized she was pulling away from me? I had to go deeper. I scrolled back another year in the call logs. There it was. Tony's number. Again. Not as frequent, but still there. Once a month, sometimes twice. 3 months before she cut me off completely. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. She had started cheating before she ever told me I had to lose weight. I wasn't a husband to her. I was a backup plan. A contingency. A convenient safety net while she played house with another man. I shot up from my chair, knocking it over. My vision blurred with pure rage. I wanted to hit something. To destroy something. To hurt something. But instead, I forced myself to sit back down, breathing heavily, gripping the edge of the desk to ground myself. Losing control wouldn't help me now. I needed to be smart. Lisa had been careful. Now I had to be even more careful. I wasn't just going to confront her. I wasn't going to yell, to accuse, to demand answers she would just lie about. No, I was going to catch her in the act. I needed evidence so airtight that when I finally made my move, she wouldn't be able to weasel out of it. I wasn't going to let her twist this around on me. I wasn't going to let her play the victim. I was going to make sure she had nowhere to hide. And when the moment was right, I was going to burn her whole world to the ground. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the darkness of my office, staring at my laptop, my mind racing through every possible scenario. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa and Tony. I saw them laughing at me, saw them together in ways that made my blood boil. I couldn't wait any longer. By the time the sun began creeping through the blinds, I had a plan. A dangerous one. But I didn't care. I was going to listen to her. I was going to hear the truth from her own lips. At exactly 10:30 a.m., I parked 2 blocks away from Tony's gym and pulled out the small receiver I had purchased at an electronics distributor earlier that morning. A top-tier surveillance bug, tiny, undetectable, and powerful enough to transmit crystal-clear audio to my device. The night before, after confirming Tony's number, I spent hours researching how to plant a bug in a phone. The method I settled on was simple. I just needed an opportunity. Lisa had made that easy. She was predictable, almost insultingly so. Every Wednesday, right before she called Tony at exactly 11:05 a.m., she called me first at 10:55 a.m., without fail. A check-in call, a way to make sure I was exactly where I was supposed to be before she made her real call. She'd done it for years, and I had never thought anything of it. Now, it was my opening. At exactly 10:55 a.m., my phone rang. Lisa's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hey, babe." she said, her voice smooth and sweet. Just checking in before your meeting. I forced myself to sound normal. Yeah, just getting ready for it now. You sound tired, she said. Did you sleep okay? I swallowed back the bitterness in my throat. The gall of this woman. Yeah, just a little restless. Long night. Ah, she cooed. We'll have a nice dinner tonight, okay? I nearly laughed out loud. Yeah, I murmured. Sounds good. She let out a small sigh. All right, I won't keep you. Love you. I clenched my jaw. Love you too. I hung up and stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Within the next 10 minutes, she would call Tony. And this time, I would hear every word. I adjusted the receiver, turning up the volume, my hands gripping the device so tightly my knuckles ached. A moment later, I heard it. The faint sound of a phone ringing. Then the rustling of fabric, followed by a deep male voice answering. Hey babe, Tony said. My stomach clenched. Lisa's voice was softer, more intimate. A tone I hadn't heard from her in years. Hey, she breathed. You alone? Tony chuckled. Yeah. What's up? A pause. Then Lisa let out a small sigh. Mark's been acting weird. I tensed at the sound of my name. Tony made a disinterested noise. Weird how? Lisa hesitated. I don't know. He asked me where I was last Friday. Like, out of nowhere. Tony let out an annoyed grunt. Think he suspects something? A heartbeat of silence. I don't know, Lisa admitted. Maybe, but I don't think he has any proof. I gritted my teeth. Not yet. Tony exhaled. Maybe we should cool it for a while. My breath hitched. Lisa's response came fast, too fast. No, she said. We just have to be careful. Tony chuckled. You really can't go a week without me, huh? Lisa laughed, actually laughed. A soft, sultry sound that made my stomach twist into knots. You know I can't, she murmured. The first time we slept together, I knew I'd do anything to be with you. The blood in my veins turned to ice. The first time. There was a first time. Lisa sighed again. I cut him off to be with you, you know. It made it so much easier. My entire body locked up. I gripped the receiver so hard I thought it would crack. I had suspected it. I had feared it. But now, hearing it from her own lips, it felt like someone had taken a knife and driven it straight into my chest. Tony hummed in satisfaction. And now, Lisa hesitated. Now I just need to keep him distracted. Maybe get my hair done, buy some new lingerie, something to make him think I'm trying to spice things up so he stops asking questions. Tony laughed. Damn, babe. You're ruthless. Lisa giggled. I just know how to handle my husband. I nearly blacked out from the rage that surged through me. She wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me, manipulating me, playing me like a fool. The call ended a few moments later. I sat there in stunned silence, my entire body trembling. My breathing was ragged, my hands shaking violently. I had the proof I needed. Lisa had cut me off for him. She had planned everything, and she thought she could keep doing it. She thought she had me under control. She thought I was stupid. A slow, eerie calm settled over me as I stared out the windshield. She had no idea what was coming. This wasn't just going to end in heartbreak. It was going to end in fire. I spent the next 2 days preparing. The rage that had nearly consumed me after hearing Lisa's call had settled into something colder, sharper, calculated. She had been meticulous in her deception, careful in covering her tracks, and completely confident that I would never figure it out. She thought she had me beat. She thought I was weak. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I wasn't going to confront her right away. No screaming, no accusations. That's what she would expect. Instead, I was going to hit her where it hurt, her ego, her pride, and the perfect little world she had built around her lies. By the time Saturday rolled around, everything was in place. Lisa was already outside by the pool when I arrived home that afternoon. She was lounging on one of the chairs, oversized sunglasses covering her eyes, pretending to be relaxed. But I could tell she was tense. She knew something was off. I had been distant since our last conversation, quieter than usual. I hadn't questioned her anymore, hadn't pushed. She probably thought I had let it go. She was wrong. I stood at the edge of the patio, hands in my pockets, watching her for a moment before I spoke. You look comfortable, I said smoothly. Lisa lifted her sunglasses, flashing me a lazy smile. It's a beautiful day. You should come join me. I smiled back. Oh, don't worry. I plan to. Before she could question what I meant, the front gate opened, and they walked in. Brenda, Sally, Linda, 3 stunning women, dressed in bikinis that left very little to the imagination. Lisa sat up, her smile faltering. She looked from the women to me, confusion and irritation flickering across her face. "Who the hell are they?" she asked, her voice tight. I stepped forward casually. "Friends," I said, tilting my head. I invited them over to use the pool. Lisa's lips parted, but no words came out. I turned to the women, gesturing toward the lounge chairs. "Make yourselves comfortable, ladies. The sun's perfect today." They exchanged amused glances before doing just that. Sally stretched her legs out, adjusting her sunglasses. "Wow, Mark, you didn't tell us your wife would be here," she said, her tone dripping with fake innocence. Lisa stiffened. "Excuse me." Brenda smirked, adjusting the strap of her bikini top. "Oh, we just figured you'd be busy today. Like every other Saturday." Lisa's face paled. I watched as she processed what was happening. The cracks were forming. I grabbed a chair and sat across from her, keeping my expression neutral. "You seem tense," I observed. Lisa swallowed, forcing a smile. "Mark, can I talk to you for a second? Alone?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "No, I think this is the perfect place to talk." Lisa's fingers curled into the chair's armrests. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking slightly. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "You tell me, Lisa," I said softly. "What do you think this is?" Her lips pressed together. I could see the panic rising in her, the way her mind was scrambling for a way out. I didn't let her escape. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. The recording played loud and clear. "The first time we slept together, I knew I'd do anything to be with you." Lisa's breath hitched. Brenda let out a low whistle. "Damn. Cole." I kept my gaze locked on Lisa's face. The blood drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened, then closed, as if she wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Not this time. I let the recording play out. Every single word. Her laughter. Her plan to keep me distracted. Her reassurance to Tony that she had cut me off to be with him. By the time it ended, Lisa was trembling. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You were saying?" Silence. Sally snorted, shaking her head. "You know, Lisa, if you were going to cheat, you should have at least been smart about it. But damn, you really thought he'd never find out." Lisa shot her a murderous glare. "Stay out of this," she snapped. Brenda laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, this isn't your show anymore." Lisa turned back to me, eyes wild. "Mark," she said desperately. "I can explain." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "No, you can't," I said coldly. "And honestly, I don't want to hear it." Tears welled in her eyes. "But you used me, Lisa," I said, my voice deadly calm. "You manipulated me, made me feel like I wasn't enough. All while you were screwing another man behind my back." She shook her head violently. "No, Mark, I love you." You don't," I said simply. "You love control. You love power. You love winning." I gestured to the women around us. "But today, Lisa, you lost." She choked back a sob. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. Her face crumbled the moment she saw them. Divorce papers. Brenda, who doubled as a process server, smirked as she handed them to Lisa. "You've officially been served." Lisa's hands shook as she took them, her eyes begging me. "Mark, please." I stood, towering over her. "It's over," I said, my voice final. "Pack your bags. You're leaving today." She let out a strangled sob, clutching the papers to her chest. I turned to the three women, giving them a satisfied nod. "Ladies, enjoy the pool." Then, without sparing Lisa another glance, I walked inside. Behind me, I could hear her breaking apart. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't look back as I stepped inside, leaving Lisa to crumble beneath the weight of her own betrayal. Her sobs echoed across the backyard, mixing with the sound of water lapping against the pool's edge. I might have pitied her once. Not anymore. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I wasn't done yet. Lisa wasn't the only one who needed to pay. Tony. The name alone made my jaw tighten. He had gotten away with this for years, laughing behind my back, stealing from my marriage, using my wife like a plaything while I broke my body trying to be the man she wanted. And he was so damn confident, so sure that he was untouchable. That was about to change. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the number I had saved the night before. Gino Margarella. Lisa thought she was smart, but she wasn't the only one who had been making calls. Tony had other women. That much was obvious from Lisa's conversations. But one name had come up more than once, Gina. And Gina was married. To Gino Margarella. I had done my research. Gino wasn't the kind of man you crossed. He was the kind of man whose name carried weight in the city. The kind of man who had friends. The kind you didn't want showing up at your doorstep unannounced. And Tony? Tony had been warming his wife's bed. I pressed call. The phone rang twice before a deep voice answered. "Who's this?" I smiled. "A friend. One who thought you might like to know what Tony Bianchi has been up to with your wife." A long silence. "Then go on." I kept it short. Straight to the point. I told him about the calls, the meetings, the affair that had been happening right under his nose. By the time I was done, I could hear Gino's breathing, slow, controlled, but filled with something lethal. "Where is he now?" he asked. I glanced at the time. If he sticks to his usual routine, he'll be at his house in about an hour. Gino let out a low chuckle. "Appreciate the tip." The line went dead. I exhaled, setting my phone down. Tony had ruined lives. He had taken what wasn't his without a second thought. And now, he was about to learn what it felt like to lose. I didn't have to wait long. An hour later, I was sitting in my car across from Tony's house. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the street. Then I saw them. A black SUV rolled up, slow and deliberate. The kind of car that didn't belong in a neighborhood like this. The passenger door opened first. Gino stepped out, dressed in dark jeans and a leather jacket, his expression unreadable. Two other men followed, built like they could break a man in half with their bare hands. They moved toward the house with purpose. I almost felt sorry for Tony. Almost. I didn't need to see what happened next. I already knew how this story ended. But just as I was about to drive away, the front door burst open. Tony staggered out, wild-eyed, blood already dripping from his nose. He barely made it 3 steps before Gino grabbed him by the shirt and drove a fist into his stomach. Tony collapsed to his knees, gasping. One of Gino's men stepped forward and struck him across the face, sending him sprawling onto the driveway. Gino crouched beside him, speaking too low for me to hear. But whatever he said made Tony's face drain of color. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, Gino nodded to the other 2 men. They pulled Tony to his feet. And just before they hauled him back inside, I saw it. Fear. Real, raw, desperate fear in Tony's eyes. He knew this wasn't just a beating. This was punishment. This was justice. I sat back in my seat, watching as the door shut behind them. I didn't need to hear the screams. I didn't need to see the damage. I already knew Tony Bianchi wouldn't be walking away from this the same man. If he walked away at all. With a quiet satisfaction settling in my chest, I turned the key in the ignition and drove off, leaving Tony to his fate. Lisa had lost her marriage. Tony had lost his everything. And me? For the first time in a long time, I had won. I drove away from Tony's house without a glance in the rearview mirror. I didn't need to see the rest. I already knew how it would end. Tony had made his bed. Now, he was being buried beneath it. As for Lisa, she was probably still sitting by the pool, clutching those divorce papers like they were her last lifeline, trying to figure out how everything had slipped through her fingers so fast. She had spent years believing she was in control, manipulating, scheming, lying. And in the end, she had nothing left. No lover, no marriage, just the wreckage of the life she had destroyed with her own selfish hands. I should have felt something. Pity, regret, maybe even the ghost of the love I used to have for her. But all I felt was relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, second-guessing every word, every interaction, every small shift in her behavior. I was free. I didn't go back home that night. That wasn't my home anymore. Instead, I checked into a hotel, dropped my bag on the floor, and collapsed onto the bed. The room was quiet, too quiet, but I welcomed it. It was better than the suffocating silence Lisa and I had shared for months. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of exhaustion finally settle in. It was over. The fight, the lies, the war I hadn't even known I was fighting until it was too late. And now, I had nothing left to do but move forward. The divorce was quick. Lisa didn't fight it. She knew better. She signed the papers without a word, and just like that, 10 years of marriage were wiped away with ink. 7 months later, I stood outside the courthouse, the final decree in my hands. It was done. Legally. Officially. Permanently. Lisa had begged me to talk before the last hearing, her eyes red and swollen, her voice hoarse from crying. "Mark, please," she had whispered. Can't we start over?" I had looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just the realization that the woman standing in front of me was a stranger. She had been a stranger for years. No, I had said simply. And then I walked away. I never spoke to her again. She tried calling. I ignored everyone. She sent messages, long-winded apologies mixed with desperate attempts to make me feel guilty. I never responded. Lisa wasn't my problem anymore. I had spent too long being the fool in someone else's game. Now, I was building something new. And that's exactly what I did. I sold the house, took the money, packed my bags, and moved into a place that was mine alone. I got a dog, too, actually. Golden retrievers. I named them Max and Cooper. They never lied to me, never manipulated me, never made me feel like I wasn't enough. They were always happy to see me, no matter how much I weighed, no matter what mood I was in. For the first time in years, I had real, unconditional love, even if it had fur and a wagging tail. And as for revenge, I had taken mine. Lisa lost everything she had taken for granted. Tony paid the price for his betrayal. I walked away clean and clear. And I won. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's moving on, living well, and knowing that the people who wronged you have to live with the choices they made. I had spent 2 years fighting to be the man Lisa claimed she wanted. Now, I was finally becoming the man I wanted to be. And that was a victory worth more than any revenge. Looking back, I see now that everything that happened, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of pain, was a lesson I needed to learn. Lisa's deception wasn't just about infidelity. It was about power, manipulation, and control. And for too long, I had been blind to it. I had convinced myself that if I just worked harder, if I just became better, she would finally love me the way I had always loved her. But love isn't something you earn through suffering. Real love isn't conditional. It isn't a reward for meeting someone else's expectations. And the hardest lesson of all, sometimes, the people you trust the most will betray you in ways you never thought possible. But that doesn't mean you let it break you. I could have let my anger consume me. I could have let Lisa's betrayal turn me bitter, make me resentful, make me believe that love isn't worth it. But instead, I chose freedom. I chose to walk away, to rebuild, to create a life that wasn't defined by the pain someone else inflicted on me. So if there's one piece of advice I can give, it's this. Don't waste your years chasing love from someone who doesn't truly see you. Surround yourself with people who appreciate you for who you are, not what you can provide for them. And if someone betrays you, don't beg, don't fight, just leave. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you never needed them in the first place.